Hey everyone, welcome back. You are listening to 한국어천재 on TBS EFM 101.3. And as you guys know, it is Monday, which means it is time to talk about the food, my favorite topic. But you guys know I can't do this alone. I'm here with Chef Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Now, I gotta say, I'm so glad to have you back here because we have been covering, well, for a while, we were covering vegan foods for a long time here. And then, Daniel too, Professor Daniel, we were kind of like, oh, let's try to transition into summer stuff. And Suyun on Friday was like, let's talk about kind of summer fashions here. And I feel like you all had a powwow or something, got together, and we're like, we're going to talk about some hot, the foods for the summers here, I guess.
Well, it's the time to talk about it, literally. I mean, we just missed it. But there are specific days where you have to eat specific foods in the summer. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it.
You guys hear that? You're not going to make it. I don't know how you've made it this far if you didn't eat this. This is
pure blind luck.
Now, what are these things that we're going to be talking about? I feel like some of our listeners who are paying attention might recognize some of these words.
Oh, maybe it's time to hand out some brownie points for the ones who do. So we are going to be talking about 복날.
복날. Do you guys recognize this 복, by the way? You should. I've brought it up many a time here. Brownie points for those who might recognize it. What is 복날?
So 복날 are these 3 days. So altogether they're known as 삼복, the 3 days during the summer where it is the hottest kind of like the dog days of summer, right? Where it's like sweltering and it's just those days where it just stands out in your memory that it's just like, oh, remember that day? Oh, that was the worst. These are the 3 days.
I can't stand these. I actually have a story about this. My grandma and grandpa, who I just gave a shout out to about 10 seconds ago, they came to Korea, flew all the way over from small town Wisconsin. They were all excited. They're like, we're going to have a great time. And it was 삼복. And we're from Wisconsin where there is not this sort of heat. There's definitely not this humidity. And my poor grandparents were just completely unprepared for the oven-like heat that hits you every time you walk outside. It was like, whoa.
It's a real thing. I mean, I've been living pretty much my entire life in either very hot or very humid places, so I'm okay. But actually, just today, I was meeting up with an old friend. He's from the UK. Been living in Korea for 10 years. Still can't take the humidity.
I'm with him. I'm right there. I can take the cold like nobody's business. I am Little Miss Snowman over here. I can huddle around in my parka, but oh gosh, when it comes to these things, even in terms of food too, I've slowly started to get better because of the foods that I've heard about. And some of them are definitely on this list here. But to kind of review, and I'm going to be testing our listeners here, what are the 3 삼복s? What do we call them here?
So you have 초복, 중복, and 말복.
That's right.
And if you understand the kind of prefixes behind this, it's easy because they basically mean like the beginning, middle, and the end.
Yeah.
Right? The first, second, and third of the 복날.
Yeah.
And for any of our listeners who want to celebrate these days specifically, so we just passed the last one on the 16th. The next one is going to be on the 26th of July.
Okay, so that will be 중복 then.
Right.
And then the last one, is there a set date for 말복?
Yes, it is August 15th.
And is that like a set thing or does it change every year?
Just like the other holidays that are set according to the lunar calendar, those will change year by year.
Okay, so we had, if you guys remember on the 16th, I told you guys today is 초복. Well, that day was 초복. And so if you guys remember, keep that in mind that 중복 here is coming up on the 26th. So I'm going to be testing you guys. Get your notes and your pens and your papers ready here. I'm going to have a quiz. But so when it comes to the 복날, there are certain foods in Korea that I feel like people will often talk about. I have a couple messages in here, but before I'll get to it in a second. I see you, JY Che. I'm coming for you.
They're jumping the gun over there.
But what are these kind of foods we're talking about?
So we're talking about Pouyangshi. So Pouyangshi are these dishes that you eat during these extremely hot days to traditionally get your energy levels up. And a lot of this is based off of Korean traditional medicine as well.
And you guys might remember, I think it was Professor Daniel, or maybe it was a headline. We had covered headlines about Pouyangshi, and there were a couple that were mentioned in there. Don't worry, we're going to be getting to those here. But that Pouyangshi there is like Matt said here, it's about getting that energy up Korea because when it is this hot, you just don't feel like doing anything.
Sure. And so most Pouyangshi is about getting that physical energy up. Like most Pouyangshi tends to be very protein heavy, for example.
Yeah,
and,
that's for sure.
But the other part is to get a certain type of, I guess, body balance energy in there.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of break down all the foods that you eat here in Korea, they all have a different sort of energy. And so traditionally, those 복날, the Pouyangshi that you eat during these times, they have a warm energy about them.
That's right. Everyone here, I'm very curious because we're going to get into some Pouyangshi foods and 복날 foods here. But before we move on, I have a question for you all. What is your favorite Pouyangshi food, or maybe one that you recommend, one that you eat a lot? Let me know. I would love to hear from you guys. 네, 여러분 혹시 좋아하는 보양식 있으신가요? If you do, send a message for 51 to hashtag 1013 and we'll be sure to send you guys a Vatos Korea 50,000 voucher. 네, 50원의 유료 문자 샵 1013에 보내주시면 추첨을 통해 바토스 코리아 5만 원 상품권을 보내드립니다. But now we're going to go on to these here. I want to hear from you all. I'm going to be checking, but I want to hear what Matt has to say on all this here. What do you recommend?
So I think the one that I have to recommend, and this is the big one, right? This is the one that comes to mind for everybody, and that's 삼계탕.
Oh, yep. That's what JY Choi here says. 복날엔 삼계탕이죠. Oh, thank you for the egg, yo. But absolutely. Now, 삼계탕, some of you might know, but what is it for those who maybe are not familiar with it?
So 삼계탕, if you break down the word, 삼 refers to 인삼, which is a medicinal herb here in Korea. 게 is kind of the 한문 term for chicken.
Oh,
right. So you'll see it in other dishes too, like 초계국수.
Yes.
So 초계국수 is a like vinegary cold chicken noodle dish, which is one of my favorites. But same 게 there too, and then 탕 being soup, and so it is a 인삼 and chicken soup. And did you actually know that this is the reason why it's called 복날?
No, really?
It's chicken soup is go.
Are you are messing with me? Get out of here.
Okay, listeners.
Get out.
Yeah.
Matthew's not allowed on the show anymore. I love the 아재 개그. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we've got it, but isn't samgyetang hot? Like
it is hot. It is served boiling hot, and it's one of these things, right? So I think there's that famous term, right? Was it 이.열.치.열? So that refers again to the warm energy. Both 인삼 and chicken, they have that warm energy, as well as the chapsar that goes in there. So this is the chicken that's boiled whole. It's stuffed with chapsar or glutinous sticky rice.
Yeah.
And then it's a broth that is also flavored with 인삼 and 대추, which are dried jujubes. Similar to dates, oftentimes they're translated as dates. It's a good enough translation, but
Close
they're
enough.
definitely not the same thing.
Yeah.
Similar kind of dried fruit, that kind of like dark brown ambery taste to them.
That's interesting. And so it's kind of funny because you guys are getting reviewed on a lot of things here. That 이.열.치.열, we actually had kind of talked and covered before. Daniel's been like bringing up all these different like summer related phrases and things like that. And 이.열.치.열 is talking about fighting fire with fire, right? And so in this case, you're talking about fighting that heat with some more heat in there. Not necessarily spicy, but just like the general heat itself. Because apparently, and you can confirm this, we read this article that was talking about how cold foods and cold drinks, while they taste really good going down, they're actually not the best for your digestive system. Is that true?
I heard this my entire life.
Yeah.
Like my mom would always tell me in the summertime I shouldn't be drinking cold water. I should be drinking like room temperature or warm like 보리차 instead.
Yeah.
So I think the actual science on this is out one way or another, just because I think it doesn't take into account just how adaptable our bodies are. So I think actually I was talking about this with my wife the other day. The idea of like Pouyangshi, and like there isn't really an equivalent in the United States.
No, yeah.
But we thought about it, there kind of is.
What's
so
that?
the idea of Pouyangshi, it's not food per se, but vitamin supplements. So both of these like ideas contain all these good things that are things that are good for us and that our body needs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it won't necessarily kill you if you go without. It's one of these things that it's like, it's by doing all of this, it kind of puts you at like you're at the top of your game.
Yeah.
And you should be taking care of yourself in as optimal way as possible. But one of these, like if you drink cold water, it doesn't necessarily mean that your digestive system is going to go haywire.
Okay, so you're kind of saying like this 보양식 might have some merit to it, but we're not exactly taking into account the way your body actually can adapt to a lot of things as well.
I think if you read a lot of, especially from Korea, like newspaper articles and kind of like op-ed pieces, I think the general consensus now that we're in the 21st century is that there's not a lot of necessarily scientific or medical basis behind it, but you cannot deny the cultural aspect of it.
For sure, there's so much culture based in this.
Think about being, again, your typical American diet in the winter. The idea of like a chicken pot pie or a beef stew, these very hearty dishes.
Or a tomato soup with a grilled cheese sandwich.
All these are very warm foods to get you through a winter, but you're not going to eat a plate of beef stew and walk out without a jacket.
That's very true. Absolutely.
A lot of these really come down to the emotional response that they give you. And because you grow up during the summertime here in Korea, you equate having some samgyetang or other types of poyangshik to really give you that energy.
Yeah.
And that cultural power cannot be denied when it comes to food. It's part of the reason why we are on the air talking to, people all around the world about food is because it's important.
Exactly. And people connect to it. And I feel like a lot of people here, you gave us the ingredients here for samgyetang. Is it pretty difficult to make or is it fairly easy?
Pretty simple. You just have to make sure that you have good ingredients. It's going to taste a little bit different. So for people outside of Korea who've had it in Korea and maybe go elsewhere and, go back home and try it, one thing I have noticed that chicken in Korea tends to, for lack of better words, the fat tastes less yellow and more white.
Interesting.
Do you get what I mean? Like I have.
Is it taste more like buttery?
Less buttery.
Like in the yellow.
Yeah,
because I feel like I see more yellow fats in the US.
Sure.
And then, for lack of better word, less buttery, greasy. Less greasy.
more 깔끔해.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is it. So
okay.
samgyetang is a very 깔끔하고 담백한 dish. It's a very clean tasting chicken soup. And the insam that's added in there and the techu as well, they all kind of add to this. So you just have to make sure that you're boiling it. You're boiling it nice and mild, and then you're not boiling it with any other seasonings as well. Those you add at the table. So you might add salt, pepper, some chopped green onion in there to your samgyetang.
Yeah.
But by and large, it's a very simple dish to make. Oh,
good. Well, we actually have some more people chiming in here about their 보양식s that they're talking about. Silly Serious here says, as 보양식, 콩국수 is a better deal. What do you think about 콩국수 being up there?
I love 콩국수. As a matter of fact, my wife and I have been going on this kind of quest to find the best 콩국수 in Seoul.
Oh, this is a challenge.
I'll tell you about what our findings so far after the show, just because there's so many names of places.
Correct.
But so far, there is one standout, and this place is amazing. You got to go.
Oh my goodness, you guys. I'm going to get the deets here on this. I'm so excited. Maybe someday it'll come up on my Instagram page. Who knows? We also have a message here from 5593님. It says, 보양식은 장어가 최고 맛있어요. 장어 구이, 장어 덮밥, 장어 국수 이야기하다 보니 너무 먹고 싶네요. 8월 15일에 케일라하고 장어 먹으러 갈 거예요. 오 마이 갓. 저랑 같이 가는 거예요? 아니 근데 정말요. 저도 장어 너무 좋아하거든요. 저 진짜 부산 갈 때마다 제가 좋아하는 장어 덮밥집인가? 예, 덮밥집인데 되게 맛있어요. I always eat 장어 when I go to Busan because they're so close to the sea there. So you get some really... 장어 is the term for eel for those who are wondering. And so this person here, 5593님, is saying that their favorite 보양식, the best one, is eel because there's grilled eel, 장어 구이. 장어 덮밥 is like the what would I call 덮밥? Like rice bowl, I guess you could say.
Rice bowl.
Yeah, 장어 국수, as we know, 국수 are like those kind of brothy sort of, I don't want to say soup, but what would I call that? Like those brothy kind of...
I think soup is fine.
We've covered this.
Right,
the tang versus the jjigae versus the jjim.
It's so inexact, but as long as people know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Here, so there's all these different ways to eat 장어, especially during the summertime. I 100% agree. 재밌는 메시지 보내주셔서 정말 감사합니다. 마토스 쿠폰 보내드리겠습니다. Thank you, thank you. Oh, and we just got another message in here from 9910님. It says, 해신탕이 최고. 삼계탕에 전복이나 낙지를 넣은 탕이에요. Oh, this person's jumping the gun here a little bit. We actually plan to cover these things here. I guess we could kind of jump into that a little early here. They're talking about all these different types of seafood and shellfish and things that can be put in these types of tangs. As you guys remember, different tangs are there. So what are some of these that you can kind of eat during the 복날's?
Well, I think, that this kind of makes up the next really big half of Pouyangshi. Just because 삼계탕, again, that's one half of it. It's so big. Like, this is the one that almost everyone goes for. And in fact, if you kind of look in traditional Korean medicine, there are these 4 body types.
Yeah.
And the most common type of body type here in Korea is one that is really suited towards chicken. But the other types tend to say, like, avoid heavier proteins and instead go for seafood. And I think I'm hard pressed to say what's like the top Pouyangshi of all of the seafoods. 장어 is really up there.
Yep.
And for viewers who've never, or listeners who have never had eel before, it's fantastic. It's fatty and it's got this great texture to it. Not everyone likes it, but I don't know too many people who hate it.
Yeah.
I think it kind of ranges from I love it to it's an
alright.
excuse to eat ginger.
Exactly. I am on team love it. I will take a just full plate of grilled eel, and I love it when they put the yangnyeom sauce on it too.
Sure.
That kind of sweet and spicy sauce on some grilled eel. Chef kisses. That's so good.
They're basically barbecued ribs. They're seafood barbecue ribs.
They're delicious. Highly recommend trying it if you ever get the chance here. But so we've got the 장어, but what are some other things? We've got some people here. We've got 5327님 that says 우리 집은 산에서 닭을 키워요. Oh, so they're raising chickens at their house here. 케일라님 오시면 잡아드릴게요. 도종 딱입니다. Thank you. I feel so happy. They're saying if I go, they'll give me some chicken here. 감사합니다.
Not just chicken, 토종닭, free-range chicken.
This is pretty exciting because free-range chicken, it has a different taste to it?
It does, just because that chicken gets to move around a little bit more. It's moving its muscles. And in general, with just about any animal, the more you work your muscles, just the more flavorful it'll be. Maybe a little less tender, but with 삼계탕, you're simmering it for a long time anyway, so it's going to get tender no matter what.
Oh, that's great. So everyone, 토종닭 is the term for free-range chicken. That's so exciting. Oh, and we have a 현지채 here. It says, KD 홍보 타임. KD가 맛있다는데 다 알고 싶은데 진짜 다 홍보하면 I can't. I swear, I am like the 홍보 queen here. I wish I could, but I can't. But I do love sharing all different sorts of 맛집s and good foods here. So if we could give them a little, like just a wrap up on these kind of seafood things here before we go, what would you say besides 장어 is like a good kind of thing to experiment with for Pouyangshi?
I think if you're talking about 2 soups, you have one that's very accessible, which is 매운탕, specifically 민어 매운탕.
Yes.
And then you have one that's a little bit more adventurous, 추어탕. And now I know there are some people out there who can't eat it, especially younger folks.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people who really love it. So 추어 is loach. It's also known as 미꾸라지 here in Korea.
Really? I didn't know that.
So that's another term for 추어. And it's this little slippery fish, and it's a freshwater fish. So if you've ever had freshwater fish before, it kind of has that river flavor to it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very earthy. And sometimes it's served whole, but most often that 미꾸라지, that 추어, it's ground up. And so you have it almost thickens the entire soup. And both of these are going to be spicy. 추어탕 is a little bit spicy. 매운탕, as the name suggests.
The name there, 매운탕.
And this is most often made with 민어, another type of freshwater fish. And this is most similar if you've ever had it, kind of like a catfish, but it's specifically known as a croaker.
Croaker. That is such a cute. I'm picturing this fish, like this old kind of fish crawling around, just croaker.
Yes, it's a fish, not a toad, by the way.
Well, I mean, these are all so good here, and I feel like we definitely are going to be able to cover some more here in the future. But as always, we always end up running out of time here. So if we could wrap it up with one last thing here, I feel like the biggest would be the 3 kind of small seafoody things you'll find, which would be, for me, my favorite, the oysters. I love those. Those are always great in the summertime here. Oysters are known as 굴, right? Now, this is the thing I want to point out before we go. Oysters are 굴, And then you have the word for mandarin oranges, which are 귤. And then you have the word for honey, which is 꿀. So you have 꿀, 귤, 꿀. And it drives me crazy because those are not easy to differentiate sometimes.
But they're all delicious, so really, I mean, does it really matter if you mix them up? I don't think so.
Yeah, would you be upset if you got a plate of oysters instead of oranges? I don't think so. They're all good, right? Well, thank you, Matt, so much for joining us again. I always feel like I learned so much with you here.
Well, thank you. And you know what? We'll talk about some hot summer foods a little bit later on this month, just because this summer's not over yet.
Yeah, for sure. You guys stick around. If you have any questions for Matt, please feel free to send us a message to our Instagram page. We would love to have him answer that for you.